Champion in action is normal motion. Note that he gallops with his hind legs spread well apart. With a furlong to go, Molly pulls him to the middle of the track as Rapirio dashes to the front. Now For Freedom's challengers takes the lead and seems set for victory. Bernborough can't possibly win, but here he comes. What a stride, what a horse, what a finish. But it's too late. No, it isn't. He might do it. Foot by foot, inch by inch, he pegs the leaders back. Can he do it? He can, and he does.
And Bernborough was born at the famous Kyalla stud near Toowoomba. Colts and fillies bred in the purple roam the green paddocks, building strength and vitality for the day when they too will race for the rich prizes of the Australian turf.
The Darling Downs is renowned as the home of blue bloods, as the birthplace of the legendary Bernborough. But out past the big studs, out where the plains sweep forever, an elderly horseman tells the story of racing's fickle fortunes. Colin Bache was the boy who broke in Bernborough.
Well, his mother was the ugliest looking thing you ever saw, in my book. And, when you went out in the paddock to bring him into the yard to have a look at him, she'd race the far into the paddock and he'd be following. I think that's where he learnt to gallop.
When Colin's dad bought the mare Bernmaid and her foal Bernborough for 155 guineas at this 1940 sale, Colin had to walk them the 15 miles home, and that was in the middle of a drought. And whenever Colin had to cart the foal any distance, he'd load him onto this old Bedford truck. Today it's rusting in Colin's paddock, but half a century ago it was transport for the colt who became the greatest middle-distance horse this country ever saw.
Bernborough, idol of the Australian turf, long-striding rival of the late great Farlap, and without question one of the greatest racehorses Australia has produced. Queensland-bred, Bernborough looked different.
Nobody else ever got that. When he was that young, took a photo in that young.
Above Colin's meal table is the picture taken by his sister of Bernborough as a yearling.
You look at it and you say, well, look at I missed, you know.
The sadness is that though Colin broke in Bernborough, he never got to race him. Colin's dad, Frank Bache, had been involved in the ring-in of another horse. And even when the Baches registered Bernborough in the name of Colin's brother, Jack, the dispute grew into such a fiasco that Bernborough was not allowed to race in Brisbane until he was 6 years old.
Yes, this is the ownership form, which is, in the Queensland Turf Club Museum. It's donated by the Queensland Turf Club, and it's the application for the registration of a racehorse. And this was the transfer of registration from Mr. Bash to Mr. Hadwin.
There was a lot of controversy about this.
In 1941.
Even when the Baches sold Bernborough to Albert Hadwin for 140 quid, the stewards maintained their ban.
The Queensland Turf Club stewards, unsatisfied that this was a bona fide registration form, even had the handwriting experts come to check the signatures of both Mr. Hadwin and this section of the form which was filled in.
Because of all this controversy, he never raced in Brisbane until he was a 6-year-old?
Not only this was only one segment of the whole drama associated with it.
So, forbidden from racing in Brisbane, Bernborough had his first 20 races at Toowoomba's Clifford Park on the Darling Downs. And from the first, Colin Bates knew he'd said goodbye to a once-in-a-lifetime racehorse.
After he first started, a 2-year-old in Toowoomba, well, I think everyone knew he was going to be a champion.
By the summer of 46, he'd gone from bush nag to national hero.
The champion in action is normal motion. Note that he gallops with his hind legs spread well apart. Now watch the true poetry of this rhythmic marvel's movements, as with all 4 feet off the ground, he covers 25 feet in a stride.
Still not allowed to race in Brisbane, The post-war crowds flocked to see him in Sydney and in Melbourne, where they idolised Bernborough as much as the people of the Depression had worshipped Phar Lap.
With a furlong to go, Mully pulls him to the middle of the track as Rapperio dashes to the front. Now For Freedom's challengers takes the lead and seems set for victory. Bernborough can't possibly win, but here he comes. What a stride, what a horse, what a finish. But it's too late. No, it isn't. He might do it. Foot by foot, inch by inch, he pegs the leader's back. Can he do it? He can, and he does.
People had just come through the war years. They were looking for a hero of some description, equine or human, and he was the hero. You know, he emerged from nothing, and of course there was always a great charisma about him, and there was always a lot of debate about the horse and intrigue. And I think this sort of satisfied the mentality of the people of that era when they were looking for diversion, and they found diversion in the champion like Bernborough.
Jim Anderson was a schoolboy when Bernborough was brought to Brisbane just to train out of Jim's dad's stables.
He was such a hero, this horse, that the public used to come every afternoon at 3 o'clock when he exercised around this exercise ring, as we called it, and they'd line 8 deep just to watch him walk. And it was an incredible sight. Almost had to have police controlling the crowd just to watch him walking of an afternoon. That was the extent of the great horse's effect on the people in those days.
He's a champion of champions, and he belongs to all Australia.
After 8 wins in a row in Sydney and Melbourne, Brisbane crowds finally saw him race for the first time. Among them a mysterious woman in black who gambled on him in thousands of pounds, and a big punting Catholic priest, and a race caller named Keith Now.
When you talk of Bernborough, raise your cap, Neil. He had something special. He was something special.
At Brisbane, 1,200 miles from the scene of his Newmarket triumph,
In the Ahern Memorial, as always, Bernborough started slowly.
Well, the words I used, I believe, was Bernborough is almost impossibly placed. Now, have in mind, Neil, he had 10 stone 5. He's over there with, I think, nearly last in field of 27.
Cragsman, joined by Head Dewey, continues to make the pace a cracker. Bernborough is still back in the field, and once again his chance seems hopeless.
On that particular day, Bernborough would have won any race, in my opinion, in the world. In the world. And he was a world champion horse.
Bernborough is weaving his way through with a paralyzing burst of speed. He's clear on the outside and going like a whirlwind. He makes good horses look second-rate in a record-breaking dash for the judge.
It was just an incredible sight to see, and a horse that was written off in the race with a half a mile to go. And to see him storm down the outside under a very big weight and win in such magnificent style, it was a great feeling to see a great champion win in that way.
A week later, stepping up from 7 furlongs to the 11-furlong Doomben Cup and carrying a monstrous 10 stone, 11 pounds, Bernborough gave another memorable performance.
His jockey shows him the whip, but he doesn't have to use it. Bernborough, the champion, has the will to win, and does it easily from Tea Cake and Craigie.
Neil, he was the best in my time anyway, without any doubt. He proved it with the weights he carried, the way he did it, the magnificent stride of him. I'll go on here for 2 years if you let me, Neil.
Bernborough was to the middle distance races what Phar Lap was to the Melbourne Cup. And like the Red Terror, Bernborough's racing career ended tragically. It was Flemington, November the 2nd, 1946. Having won 26 of his 37 races, the unthinkable happened.
It's into the turn with Flight still in the lead, closely followed by the master. For the others in the race, the day is over. But wait a minute, Bernborough flounders. This is the moment that is the turning point in the almost unbroken career of the Wonder Horse. Flight, his only serious competitor, sweeps on to victory. The crowd is puzzled. Never before in the annals of Australian turf history has such a thing happened to a champion. Bernborough is led from the course into the paddock, and in a little while the world is to know that Bernborough, the wonder horse, has suffered irreparable injury.
The tragedy of it was something I suppose you could akin to the assassination of President Kennedy when Cinesound film generally eventually got to the movies. People just flocked to the movies, not to see the main event, but to see the Cinesound report on Bernborough and his breakdown. And it was a great tragedy, great sadness for Queensland and for the whole of Australia.
A month later, movie producer Louis B. Mayer paid £93,000 to take Bernborough to stud in America.
Hundreds crowd the wharf as the first racehorse of the land is ushered from his float to the plush-lined stable. That will be his home for the next few weeks while on the water.
As a stallion, his offspring won over $5 million. And Bernborough died in Kentucky in 1960.
Wherever you are, Bernie, say one for me.
Keith Nowd went on calling Brisbane races for 50 years, but he never saw another Bernborough. Jim Anderson, when he retired as Courier Mail turf editor, became president of the Bernborough Club, a coterie which meets 4 times a year to honour the champion. On the Darling Downs, the Toowoomba Turf Club has its museum, and the town of Oakey erected this statue to its most famous product. And Colin Bache? Well, after the horse left his care, he saw Bernborough only once, the day that Colin went to Brisbane for the Doomben Cup. Did he remember you when you went to Brisbane to see him?
Oh, well, I'd stand around him a lot.
Did you?
Yeah.
And whenever Colin looks out at that old Bedford, well, when you've touched a champion like Bernborough, it's a feeling that a horseman never forgets.